It's a beautiful sunny day today and a good day for making bread. We're going to try the Rustic Rye Bread with caraway seeds recipe that's in the May calendar. I have not made this bread yet, so we'll see how it comes out. What we've got is we've got 3 different flours. We've got rye flour, whole wheat flour, and then all-purpose flour. Actually, I'm using a high gluten bread flour today. We have salt, baking molasses, which is unsulfured. So it has a little bit milder flavor than the regular sulfured molasses, but you can use either one. Just vegetable oil, brown sugar, and dry yeast. And then, of course, the star of the show for rye bread are caraway seeds. So in my bowl, I've got 2 cups of warm water, and I'm going to add to that the yeast. Just sprinkle that in. The sugars, so that's the brown sugar and the wonderful molasses. All right. The oil, the salt, and the caraway seeds. I'm just going to give that a nice stir. Caraway seeds make it start smelling good right away. I want to make sure that the yeast is starting to get dissolved. Make sure that you don't use bread machine yeast. You want just regular dry yeast. It comes in the packets, or you can buy a package of bulk yeast. This is what I use. This is just Red Star yeast. All right, so we're going to add the rye flour, all of it. And we're going to add a little bit of the all-purpose flour, about a cup. So the all-purpose flour is going to be our gluten source. That's what holds the bread together and makes it nice and chewy. The rye flour and the whole wheat flour don't have gluten, as much gluten. So the all-purpose flour is going to give us that gluten boost. You can see it has a nice dark color from the molasses, and we're going to really give that a stir. Almost looks like gingerbread. Bring in the flour that's down on the sides and it's stuck on the spoon. And now I'm going to add my whole wheat flour. Awful lot of all-purpose flour left in my bowl. It'll be interesting to see if this dough takes it all. So remember that when you make bread, it's all about the touch, not about exact measurement. So we're going to start adding the rest of the all-purpose flour, just about a half a cup at a time, and mix it in and see what it looks like. Doesn't have to be perfect. Just sprinkle it in there and mix it in. This is how you develop the muscles in one arm. For me, when it starts to get difficult to mix it in with a spoon is when I get in there with my hands. My father was convinced that the enzymes in some people's hands made the bread taste better. And I have some friends whose hands seem to kill the yeast. All right, so I'm going to add a little bit more flour. Just start working that flour in. I don't think we're going to use all that all-purpose flour. The dough is already starting to feel nice and springy. I'm pulling back with my fingers and down with my palm. My palm is what's telling me whether this dough is wet and needs more flour, or whether it's just right. It gauges not only the wetness but the springiness. I don't want a dough that's so dense that it feels like hard Play-Doh. I like the color of this dough. Maybe just a sprinkle more. Push that dough right down into the flour that's in the bottom of the bowl. Well, I'm glad I did a video of this bread because I can reduce the amount of whole wheat flour, or the amount of white flour that's in the recipe. All right, so we have a nice ball of dough here. I've gone ahead and heated my oven up to 170 degrees, and then I've turned it off. We're going to put this dough in a pan and kind of scooch it around. This bowl is greased, picking up some of that shortening on the top of the bread so it doesn't form a skin. There, it looks like that. Isn't that beautiful? We're going to cover it with a cloth. Keep it all toasty. And we're going to put that in the oven to rise until it's doubled in bulk, or about an hour. Okay, it's been about an hour and 15 minutes. We're going to see how our rustic rye bread with caraway is rising. All right, so here's what the dough looks like. I'm going to put 2 fingers down in, and the dough does not spring back. So we're going to assume that it has risen enough. I'm going to sprinkle just a little bit of flour on here and punch it down. We'll take that out and put it on a floured pastry cloth and knead it a little bit just to get all the bubbles out. It's got a really nice feel. So baking bread today, I was thinking about my good friend Bernie, who when I was in my 20s was in her late 40s. She had 9 children. She was working full-time as a nurse at Lemoyne College, and yet she still found time to bake bread with me. And between risings, we would sit on her deck and have coffee. She was a wonderful influence, and I hope that someday I can be that influence to a young person. Okay, so here's our loaf of bread. Actually, it's going to be 2 loaves of bread. I'm going to just give this a good whomp right in half. Work that dough around and around and around until I have a nice ball. I'm just tucking the ends up underneath. Pretty nice. And that's going to go over on my baking sheet. We'll do the same thing to the second one. Squeezing it and tucking it under. Pushing it up underneath. This one's a little bit stickier. We'll give it a little bit of flour. All right, nice ball. So here are our loaves of bread. I want to give them room to rise. I'm going to go ahead and cut an X in both of them. And then I want some extra caraway seeds on one of these. So I've got a little melted butter, and I'm going to brush the top of this with some melted butter. Get it down in that crack there. You can also use beaten egg white if you don't want to use butter. There we go. And then I've got some extra caraway seeds, and I'm just going to Give those a little sprinkle on top. So we have some people in our family that like caraway seeds and some people who don't. So you can make the dough without the caraway seeds and then just put some caraway seeds on top. We're going to go ahead and cover this with a towel again. We're going to put it back in our slightly warm oven, which has been heated to 170 and turned off, and let these pretty much double. We're going to take the pan out of the oven, preheat the oven to 350, and then put the bread back in to bake. I'll check back in with you when we have a finished loaf. All right, we're taking a look at our rustic rye bread with caraway seeds. We have one that we brushed with butter and topped with caraway seeds, and one that we didn't. It's been baking for between 30 and 35 minutes. Let's see how it sounds on the bottom. So if we take this loaf and turn it over, it's nice and brown. You can hear that it sounds really hollow. So these loaves are done. They smell wonderful. We'll get this out of the way, and then we'll see what they look like on the inside. Okay, so here's our loaf of rye. It looks a little moist, but that's because of the action of the bread knife going down through it, pushed it together, and there's still a lot of steam in here. I really want to know how this tastes. So I have a favorite bread knife. If you make bread on a regular basis, you will find that you too have a favorite bread knife. What's interesting is most of the caraway seeds that I put on top have popped off as I've used the knife. So we'll see. Here's my slice of bread. We're going to put a little bit of butter on there, because why not? Give it a taste. That's a good loaf of bread. It's got a great flavor. It's got a nice chew and a soft crumb.